Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, it's a beautiful Monday morning here in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. Rise and shine. You're welcome to the show. I'm Kayode Okikiolu. Well, it's the pre-election year, as we always say, and as expected, that's what dominates, the news a lot. Who is declaring, who is not declaring, who is a contender, who is not. I think the term pretender has even been added to the lexicon of politics in Nigeria. So there's a lot of traction, understandably. It's just quarter to 2023, as I always say. So politics, yes. I mean, it's a cycle. We have to do it. It's in our constitution. You can't escape that except the constitution is changed and all of that. So that is a constant. But what is even more constant, what is the bigger one, is the question or the issue of governance. It's been said time and again that in Nigeria, people only have time, especially elected officials, only have about 2 years or thereabouts to focus on governance. Why? Well, they say that for the first year that they're elected in, they try to find their balance, learn the ropes, and all of that. So it takes a few months. In fact, it takes some time for some of them to get their commissioners or ministers. So the first 1 year is not really, they don't hit the ground running, as they say, in that first 1 year. And then the last year, which is where we are in right now, is when a lot of them focus on re-election or an upgrade to a higher office, and that's exactly what we've been seeing in recent times. Our correspondent Dele Omoyeni actually took a look at representation in the National Assembly, the sitting, and all of that. So we'd like you to take a look at this, and then we'll come back to ask the very important questions. Are we, living out governance at the expense of politics? Take a look.
It's the season of politics, and the jostling for the 2023 general elections reflects on the attendance of federal lawmakers for plenary at the National Assembly complex. Lawmakers are either seeking to return or get into new offices. Whichever side of the coin they are on, their aspirations appear to take prominence at this time.
We've had the issue of insecurity. We've had the issues of unemployment. We have other challenges in the country, but unfortunately, our effort, I said I didn't say their effort because I'm part of the political setup of the country. Our effort has been geared towards 2023, has been geared towards elections, and so that has greatly impacted somehow negatively on what I could say governance outcome.
It's been conventional practice within our polity where once INEC issues the timetable for elections, governance ends. And all you see is just symbolic actions that are taken just to give an appearance that indeed there is some semblance of governance taking place. But in actual fact, 90% of the time spent by current public office holders is targeted at how they secure their nomination.
The two major political parties, the People's Democratic Party and the All Progressives Congress, have held their national conventions. Both of them have elected the leadership of the parties during these conventions. Ahead of the conventions, political leaders, especially state governors, played key roles to determine the structure of the leadership of both parties. The idea is for them to remain relevant in the lead-up to the elections.
If you look at Nigeria today, there's no governance. We have a crisis situation, and we, the politicians, rather than deal with those crisis situations, are talking about the next election. Nigeria is preoccupied with the next election, even when we have apparent situation of crisis.
Perhaps to avoid the situation that relegates governance to the background, the National Assembly included Section 84, subsection 12 into the new Electoral Act.
Why are politicians suddenly politicizing? It's because of the new electoral law. One of the reasons why they brought the process forward is so that they can complete all the legal issues around primary, so that when people go to the polls, they're going as substantive and bona fide candidates. But the reverse challenge with that, though, is that it has extended politicking, it has extended the period for politicking.
As the 2023 political season begins, it's the hope of Nigerians that service delivery to the nation, from security to the economy, does not suffer. Dele Omoyeni, Channels Television News.
You know, I like that term, service delivery does not suffer. And, you know, we need to start seeing governance or people in government as those essentially responsible for providing services. I'm not talking about goods now, services to the people. And one of them is what the world is, what do I say, commemorated today.
Yeah, well, that's the World Malaria Day. It's World Malaria Day today. And, you know, we've been talking about malaria elimination in this country for many years. As a matter of fact, I saw a document that predates malaria, you know, control programs in Nigeria to the Second World War. That's how far back we've been talking about it. Well, maybe not Nigeria, as Nigeria, of course, we were not independent at the time. You know, but some of those issues have been playing up at that time, and one is wondering how far so far. I think it was about a year or two ago that I was privileged to attend an event by a private sector organization that wanted to eliminate malaria in their primary area of doing business, and that's Bonny Island. Now, that's a private organization, and the director of the National Malaria Elimination Program was also at that meeting and said that these things are possible. The question that I'm just asking is, we've been having this rolling plan for eliminating malaria over the years. Just recently found this document that between 2017 and 2020, the investments Nigeria has made contributed to the distribution of more than 100 million mosquito nets to protect people from malaria while building resilient and sustainable systems for health. When are we going to stop, you know, investing such humongous amounts of money in eliminating malaria over the years? Yeah. I remember at that event, we were informed that the United States of America eliminated malaria in their environment, I think as far back as 1970 or so. So, in other words, it is possible. Yeah. At some point in their lives, they had malaria as a problem. Now, we have it as a problem now, and it is killing so many people. The figures, you were trying to crunch the figures.
The World Malaria Report said out of the 627,000 deaths or thereabout we saw, that was a 2021 report that we saw globally. First, Africa is responsible for over 90% of those deaths, essentially. Nigeria is responsible for about 31% of the 627,000 global dead. So, I mean, that puts it in perspective. And yes, I mean, countries, the US, Europe, they eliminated between 50s and 70s. If you were born in the 50s.
Well, I wasn't born there.
I'm just saying, you know how old you are right now.
You know, but you know, that only, as you said, puts it in perspective that it is possible.
Yes.
Question is it one of those things that we still talk about political will? I sincerely hope not, because it is not that it is not possible, it is possible. Now, why is this a problem? Because malaria is one of the top 3, if not the #1 causes of death in the world. And if it is possible to eliminate this, you know, imagine the number of people that die as a result of malaria, and the number of human resources that we lose as a result of these things. You're at work, you suddenly catch a cold or something, and then you have to go home, you cannot deliver maximally and all those things. So when you say service delivery does not suffer, I completely, you know, line up with that one. Because don't forget, what I always say is the people employed, the people elected are employed to do a job. Part of the job that they're employed to do is to eliminate malaria and cut down as much as possible all kinds of deaths that are avoidable.
And I think the question to be answered this morning is, one, why have we not eliminated malaria? This is 2022. We're inching towards 2023 when countries, I mean, they've moved on from that. In fact, you see reports from those countries saying, well, the only malaria cases we get are those imported from Africa. That hurts when I see that kind of report. Really hurts, honestly. So why haven't we eliminated malaria? We saw what we did with COVID-19. Yes, we have to bring that up, because if there's anything that showed us is the fact that we are capable, you know, to do anything we set our minds to do. You saw how we attacked COVID-19.
And Ebola.
And Ebola, right?
So Ebola was curtailed, and someone was so afraid that if the virulence of Ebola had been what we experienced with COVID-19, I don't know if we'll be talking about the same kind of things we're talking about.
So we can do these things. So let's answer why we've not done them and then know why we need to do them. It's not rocket science, really. Insecticide-treated nets, I mean, that's what they did in those countries, aside chemotherapy, drainage swamps, and all of that. It was a combination of different things, and they achieved it. So, hey, that's a challenge this morning.
Let's take a look at the papers right after now. Our first pick this morning is the Guardian newspaper, and this is what you have on its front page, also as concerned as we were this morning. World Malaria Day, Nigeria records 200,000 deaths, loses 646 billion naira yearly to malaria. 646 billion naira yearly. How much does ASU need? I'm just asking.
It depends. For now, 200 billion naira. Okay. Yeah, if it's the other ones, I think it's over 1 trillion naira. But yeah, this
is this yearly.
Yeah, but I don't know if you can actually. Well, again, when you say any billion, you remember the issues we have in Nigeria.
Of course, certainly. Okay. Well, the writers said Nigeria, DR Congo, Tanzania, Mozambique account for over half of all malaria deaths worldwide. Okay, country received 176 billion naira worth of aids from development partners to fight malaria, says Adeyanju. No single tool available today will solve the problem of malaria, say WHO and experts. Why it is likely current vaccines would eliminate malaria by Adigboron Ashiru. Find the details of that. Continue on page 2 of the paper this morning.
You know what has been said just on that? Some have said that instead of fighting malaria, maybe we're romancing it rather than fight it. So I mean, it's like a mutually beneficial relationship. That's why we're where we are right now.
Oh God, I don't even want to, I don't know. Well, right under the headline is another issue of concern, how inflation, naira free fall, jack up 2023 election budget by 115 billion naira.
Well,
but that's it. There's so many other issues, but that's what you have. On that one story is on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper this morning.
Well, let's turn our attention to, well, leadership. Leadership is next on the lineup this morning. And what you have on the front page of a leadership, well, it's really about politics this morning. You remember we talked about governance and the politics? Well, yes, that's what you have right there. Northern PDP consensus, Ango Abdullahi on his own over Saraki Bala's choice. That's come from Baba Ahmed. So this has been like what do I say, back and forth now about a bid to get a consensus. And take a look at the writer. It says he can't decide for the North. You're being insubordinate. Governor fires back. We had him on Sunday Politics yesterday. He gave his side of the story. And a lot of other stories, or at least angles to that one on the front page. But there's a picture on the front page. It shows the wife of the president, Aisha Buhari, with APC national leader and presidential aspirant Asiwaju Bola Tinubu during the iftar organized by the First Lady at the State House Abuja over the weekend. Here was for presidential hopefuls and other leaders in the country. So that happened as well. Take a look at this one. Low capitalized insurers face business restriction. You're wondering what that means, especially if you're involved in insurance, how that affects you, how it does not maybe. Well, more details on the inside pages. And this one, we hate to see this, but clearly it's still on. Bandits kidnap Kaduna lecturer, driver, demand 100 million naira ransom. So clearly this is still a very present challenge. That's the front page of the Leadership newspaper.
New Telegraph shares the same headline as the Leadership newspaper this morning. Consensus candidacy, Ango Abdullahi's decision, personal. Northern elders says forum are political, strongly committed to principles of inclusion, fairness. Afenifere insists on Southern presidency. We didn't force anyone, says Saraki. Nigerians desire competent, credible, capable leader. Subscribe to Obi. Story is on pages 2, 3, and 4 of the New Telegraph this morning. And right beside that picture, what Obasanjo told me about president of Igbo extraction. Subscribe to Chekwas Okorie. Find the details of that. U.S. policy support towards Nigerian democracy inconsistent. Presidency alleges. Blames Kuka, others for 12 Tucanos fighter jets delayed delivery. Interesting. Imo deaths. Buhari orders security agents to intensify a clampdown on illegal refineries. The stories you'll find on pages 3 and 29 this morning.
Vanguard is next with this one, still on politics. 2023, North divided over power shifts to South. Core North not ready to cede power, that's according to a source. North may produce APC PDP candidates. North is worse off because of zoning. Suswam Igbo group storms Abuja, rallies Nigerians for Southeast, as well as a couple of other riders. In fact, just one more rider. Let me just take it. PDP must avoid self-immolation or immolation over zoning. So that's what you find there. There's a stock market story. Stock market has been doing quite well, I must say. In fact, broke some records, some years record recently. And you see stock market investors dividend earnings up 47.1% to 1.1 trillion naira. So if you're in that sphere, if you're an active player, I'm sure you've been smiling in the past few days. So it breaks the Vanguard breaks it down for you right there. But under that one is something you may have seen earlier. Insecurity, presidency blames Kuka, others for delayed delivery of 12 Tucano fighter jets. So I wonder how that is factored in. Well, there's also an update on the Imo explosion. Owners of illegal refineries on the run. You know, that story broke over the weekend, and it was just all shades of
you remember
heartbreak.
the governor of River State has been about this for a while. You know, legally, literally going out all by himself to try to stave this, but I don't know.
It's a very sad one, seeing that particular one. There's a couple of other stories on the front page. By the way, there's sports as well. Sports is on the back page. Zenga wants to coach Super Eagles. So who is Zenga? What does that mean? Well, pick up the Vanguard Sports for more details. Mr. and Mrs., of course, on the front page. You see Mr. telling Mrs. that some couples call themselves by their favorite food. For example, I call you my jollof rice. But I know a woman who calls her husband my crisp plantain chips. Well, Mrs. says, what does he look like? Mr. says, very thin and bony.
Ouch.
So, yeah.
Ouch.
Mr. and Mrs. this morning. So, I want to rethink those pet names you dole out. That's Vanguard for you.
The Nigerian Tribune this morning is also talking about what two others have spoken about earlier. Bala Saraki, Northern Elders Forum disowns consensus arrangement. Find that story on page 24 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. And the story you'll find on page 24 here. So, well, that's news has since broken of passing on of the Alaafin of Oyo, right under that major headline. What Alaafin told me during 2015 campaign made me win 2019 election, ascribed to Makinde, governor of Oyo State, says, I'm not killing Obas. Traditional worshippers condemn open display of Alaafin's corpse. That story is on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Well, it will seem like the presidency is reacting to that illegal refinery story. Illegal refinery owners must be held responsible for deaths, according to presidency. If what you said about the same story is anything to go by, where are we going to find them? Shouldn't we find them first? As a Nigerian Tribune, oh, by the way, sports on the back page again. Italian great Zenga joins race for Eagles' job. As a Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Let's turn our attention to Daily Trust with this one. Despite 4 trillion naira investment, hope dims for Ajaokuta steel takeoff. Nigeria's low-grade iron ore setback, ex-DG Mining Cadastre Office, depends on Guinea for raw material. Project 98% completed. I don't know how long I've heard how this project is close to being completed, yet again, far from being completed or at least being a reality.
That 2% must be really crucial.
That 2% is like the 100%. And so on, but
I've been hearing about this since the 80s.
Yeah, clearly, lots of questions to be answered about this Ajaokuta arrangement, because we spend money on it anyway, and it's still there. The term is moribund for decades. So that's something to chew on this Monday morning. And on top of that, another angle to the sad Imo story. Imo plans mass burial for victims of illegal refinery tragedy today. And it's a very, very heart-wrenching one you find there. By the way, there are pictures on the front page that shows villagers fleeing their homes after bandits invaded Adagba community in Abaji area council of Abuja yesterday, and this is not a pleasant sight at all. Under that, Abuja villagers flee as bandits kill one, steal motorcycles. Yet again, very present challenge we're facing. That's the Daily Trust this morning.
The Abuja Inquirer is talking about 10 billion naira waste management utility bill. AMAC, APB at war. I don't know that word again. Area Council false ceiling of Works Ministry. Others find the details of that on the continue on page 3 of the paper this morning. Right above the nameplate, Presidency blames Kuka, Southern religious supporters, that one is in parentheses, of hindering U.S. support. Find what that means on the front page, continues on page 3 of the paper this morning.
I'll take two stories for you on the front page of Nigeria News Direct. First is FG orders clamp down on illegal oil refineries nationwide. So that's on the back of the explosion we saw in Imo State. And on top of the nameplate, front page of Nigeria News Direct, you see NCC stakeholders brainstorm on blockchain's benefits to economy. So yeah, there's been a lot of conversation around. Is it crypto? Is it NFT? A lot of those things, some people don't understand and they don't want to. But clearly, I think the government is trying to find ways to imbibe this or, be a part of this, because
especially
clearly
when
it's catching on like wildfire.
Yeah, it can't go away.
So there you go, Nigeria News Direct.
And if you flip to the front page of Daily Independent, it's also talking about funds, but maybe in a different context. Foreign airlines blocked funds climbed to $300 million. What does that mean? Find the details on the front page, continues on the inside pages. Carriers stop lower classes fares, approach black market for Forex. No ticket sales in dollars. Find more of that on the inside pages. And Nigeria violating BASA agreements. That's ascribed to NANTA. Right under the picture on the front page, APC presidential primary, Simbajo, Fayemi Amoson will cut Tinubu's Southwest delegates' votes. This is getting interesting. It's like, is it a tug of war? I don't know. Well, it's politics, and I have no idea how it's played. The details of that you'll find on the front page, continues on the inside pages. Under that one, NDLEA seizes cocaine hidden in tea bags. Christ.
Wow. Okay. There you go. Even though I doubt when you say you don't know how politics is played. But that's it. A look at the front pages this morning. We're back in a moment to talk about the value of the money. Is it in your wallet, in your bank account, and how this adds up in the economy of Nigeria. You don't want to miss this. Please stay with us.
Where does this money come from? The money comes from four major sources. One, petroleum profit tax, custom and import duty, and then other levies and things like that. And it is a shame that we are talking about how to share money, while in fact we should be talking about how.
Did we not have GDP growth of 3.98% in Q4? What is the impact on the people? What is the impact on businesses? I just told you all the critical issues. We can sit here and be projecting, yes, oil price is increasing. There's a relationship between GDP growth and oil price. And so what? You go out there and tell the business person or tell the man whose purchasing power has been massively eroded that the GDP is growing. I mean, they will look at you in the face and wonder what you are talking about. We need to address critical issues of inflation, of the weakening purchasing power, of the depreciation in the exchange rate, of the terrible situation with energy. These are the very important things. If we begin to talk of GDP growth, those things are becoming more academic, especially in our current circumstance.
Well, it's always a conversation, the economy. And there are those who are wondering, okay, how far so far over the years? Leadership upon leadership in the country have talked about stabilizing the economy and all kinds of policies since the 80s until now, austerity measures, structural adjustment program, you name it. First tier, second tier, foreign exchange, all of that you find that have gone into our lexicon in the economy. Today, we're still talking about the same thing. Question is why? And is there a low-hanging fruit? Is there a sustainable plan? This conversation we will be having this morning with Dr. Biodun Adedipe, who is an economist, business strategist, founder, chief consultant, BAA Consult. He is a former member, Presidential Committee of Experts on the Redenomination of the Naira in 2008. He's a former member, Federal Government Committee of Experts on Expenditure Review between 2010 and 2011, as well as former Senior Special Assistant to the President in the Financial Sector Development in the Office of the Chief Economic Advisor in 2011. Thanks for joining us this morning, Dr. Adedipe.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, quite a dossier you have, but he's not alone here. Dr. Tope Fashola is also here. He's an economist, public policy scholar, as well as presidential candidate of the Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party in the 2019 elections. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, let me begin with Dr. Adedipe on this one. Having been a member of at least two committees of experts on issues surrounding the Naira and, of course, everything that concerns that can help us to be where we want to be. What would you say are the issues? It would seem like the issues you discussed between 2008 and 2011 are still pretty much pervasive.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I agree with you on that note, because all these years, in fact, even before then, like you rightly mentioned, several policies that were announced, adopted, began implementation, we did not address the fundamental issues. And that is why we are still where we are today. Because all these years, we've been addressing mostly financial issues, exchange rates, interest rates, inflation rate, whereas these are just indicators of some fundamentals. So until you address the fundamentals, we keep getting episodic troubles with those macroeconomic prices. And so that, in my own first summary here, is what Nigeria has been experiencing.
Well then, perhaps we should just talk about what for you are the critical, fundamental issues if we have been treating the leaves and not the roots?
Very good question. Now, primarily, every economy sits on a tripod, and that is production, and then you look at the other end of it, consumption, and then in between them, there is exchange, at times we call it trade, which means you must have policies that address what you produce vis-a-vis what you consume. But when your economy begins to tilt more towards consumption of what you don't produce and producing what you don't consume, then there is a disconnect. And that disconnect will show up in your trade. And of course, your trade will also become more directed at the external sector. And so that will bring a lot of imbalances in the external sector that shows up on your balance of payments, your balance of trade, and of course, the exchange value of your currency. So if you look very critically at the Nigerian economy, we left a strengthening industrial base in the 1970s to early 80s and became more of a destination for what is produced in the rest of the world. So if you then take that up to date, you find a shift, which I describe very simply for everyone to understand, that in the 80s, 90s, the concerns with economic policy and analysts, advocates, is we had an economy that was basically a net importer of non-oil goods. But by the time we got to the 2000s, up until date, we now became a net importer of both oil and non-oil goods, which means practically everything we consume has a footprint on the import bill. And so if you look also at the data on import bill, it's been growing steadily over the years. In fact, in 2021, we had an equivalent of $4.028 billion monthly import bill. So if you look at that, what it shows clearly is that you are dependent a lot more on the rest of the world for what you consume.
But
so
this information, my apologies, Dr. Adejuk, but this information is not new. Let me ask Dr. Fasua. This fact is not new on us. It's not something we are knowing for the first time. And just as he referenced, we've been talking about there was a time in this country where the government was saying we had too much money to deal with. Maybe because it was because of the oil boom. But the regions at the time weren't even talking about the oil boom. They were talking about their own production capacity. At what point did we lose it?
Thank you very much, and it's great to be here, and it's great to listen to Dr. Adedipe, who's a veteran in this field. Now, it's great that maybe eventually we're going to get out of what I call our ideological capture, because for a long time, the kind of economics we've been practicing, at least since 1986, has been such that, are pushed by the liberal people. And every time we talk about why are we not producing what we're consuming, they say, well, you want to shorten the economy. That is what they call in economics autarky. You're trying to protect the economy so that nothing comes in. So we signed on to WTO. We weren't ready, okay? But of course, we had no choice. And right now, a Nigerian heads WTO. That is the World Trade Organization. Because there's the kind of pressure that will come on a country like ours, especially since SAP and so on, and of course the fallouts of economic mismanagement over time, the fact that we needed to borrow money to survive and all of that, left us with no choice but to join. You see that it was in 2001 that the Chinese people economy joined the WTO, but by then they were ready to play the globalization game. And if you listen to some people, they'll tell you they probably won the globalization game. I was reading an article yesterday, this gentleman who did the analysis that if you actually consider that only 52% or thereabout of the Chinese economy is in the service sector, vis-a-vis 74-75% in Europe and America, if you recalibrate the economy, you realize that the Chinese economy is already bigger than the United States economy. So were we ready? So I'm glad that now we're talking about what's very important. that vis-a-vis, the extant or the former thinking whereby, economies are expected to be, just open up your economy and all of that, the concept of comparative advantage, which I say is one of the key ideas which are called zombie economics, dead ideas that should be buried, but they are still moving around. 1820, a certain gentleman called David Ricardo came up with the idea that, look, every economy should focus on what they can do. And so Nigeria, we were taught in secondary school, even in university, that that's the way to go. So we'd end up being a crude oil economy and an agricultural economy, but what really works is mass attack. An economy must get to that level of mass attack where, yes, you're doing well in agric, yes, you're doing well in your natural endowment, but you're also trying to do well in technology and innovation, and moving from the primary economy to the secondary to the tertiary. Now we're talking about people, economies are now at the quinary, at the fifth level.
Just a second, isn't that what policies are supposed to help address?
Yes, over time we've been, of course, like you rightly mentioned earlier, we've had so many shifts in policy, SAP was where we started devaluing the currency. And however, in devaluing the currency, there's this what's called the Marshall-Lerner theory, whereby it says that, look, you can only benefit from devaluing your economy if your export is positively elastic, to the extent that, look, if you devalue your currency, you're able to sell more crude because you have devalued your currency. But in this instance, I mean, our key export is crude oil. That's it. And after crude oil, you get cocoa, you get ginger, sesame, and all of that. And not necessarily, I mean, in fact, after crude oil, which is in the billions of dollars that we export, even though most of it is not ours, the next number you'll see is in the hundreds of millions, maybe cocoa or sesame seed, ginger, and of those oils. So in which case, they're saying that, look, we were devaluing, but we were not selling more. Especially in the crude oil, the prices are dictated from abroad.
I like the way we have backtracked this challenge. We've gone perhaps not all the way back, but at least considerably. We've gone back to understand how they say, why we're where we are today, essentially. But it's a Monday morning, and we want to see how to, you call it mass attack, right?
Yes.
Let's see how we can attack this economy and ensure that we do right by it. I'll begin with Dr. Adedipe, because you said earlier on that we've been addressing just the, not the fundamentals, but the indicators. So high unemployment, inflation, the value of the naira, high cost of living, and I should say doing business as well. So it's a Monday morning. If you were to advise those in charge of what fiscal and the monetary policies, what would you be saying we should be focusing on right now?
Thank you so very much. Now, primarily, I would say number one, manufacturing is fundamental. We had it before in some selected sectors of our economy, automotive, textile, and a couple of others. So what we lost there, how do we regret that? If you prioritize a sector, then you put incentives there, and then you also have very clearly defined targets that you want to achieve, so that whichever agency of the government has something to do with that goal you have set for yourself, also is running by deliverables. It means any head of such agency will retain his or her appointment by reason of achievement of those goals. And the way it goes simply is this, that whatever you want to inspect is what people will do. So if you go back, for example, to the days of Bojo 504, just to illustrate, Nigeria went as high as 70% local content. And that was backward integration. Supply of components from different companies all over Nigeria, 70% of that vehicle was coming locally. That will create jobs. So you don't need, therefore, in that instance, to begin to talk about unemployment, because policy is headed in a direction that will create jobs and also create value. So you are creating both jobs and wealth at the same time. And of course, government also will be enhancing its own revenue in the process. Now, that is one. Then also, the same thing goes in dealing with every other, because that also affects inflation, by the way. But the other side to it is that, why do we talk about inflation? We take it back to O-level economics. Like Tope said earlier on, these are things we know. But the times we are in, we must go pragmatic. We no longer run with textbook recommendations that we learned 50-something, 40-something years ago in the university. Now it's about what we want for Nigeria. And that means, like Tope said, we want to do a mass attack, in which case we are selective about sectors we want to incentivize and set specific goals as to what we are going to produce. Let me use another example. If, for example, we are interested in really boosting non-oil exports, I think we should be doing that on the back of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And how will that go? If Africa is our target market, then we look at African countries. What do they import today? Where do they import from? What are the specifications? So how can Nigeria displace those non-African countries from where they import? That becomes a strategic intent. And then we define everything we are going to do with respect to that. So but we don't approach things that way. So most of the time we talk about them, we talk about export incentives. Incentives for what? To achieve what?
You know, let me paint an example, yes. Pardon me, Doctor. So you talked about the Peugeot plants and all that. And it just reminded me of one of the stories on the front pages, the Ajaokuta steel plant. They said it's 98% complete. I don't know for how long I've heard that. So clearly we know the challenges we have. We know the solution which we can get, I mean, at home, for example, the Ajaokuta steel, but clearly there's something missing in bringing that to bear. So is that something you also want to speak to? Clearly we have the resources, we know the problem, we know the solutions, but it's not adding up.
You see, the problem there, I will call it, number one is courage and focus. Incidentally, the Ajaokuta steel project happens to be a part of what I was involved in way back in 1988, when we had the federal government, World Bank, study of the steel subsector in Nigeria. I was one of the consultants. It is basically international politics. And so you need courageous leaders that will say, we want this thing to work. Okay, as far back as 2004, I remember clearly writing a memo to the presidency that this project was 90-something% complete. And what we had then was only $500 million. At the time we had external reserves that was running to 40-something, 50-something billion dollars. Of course, that period of President Obasanjo will run to the peak of external reserves in Nigeria, $64 billion. And I wrote a memo there and said, look, if the management of that complex said the $500 million required is to get feedstock, as they call it, that will last them for 9 months, which is their trade cycle, and once they are able to get that, they don't need support from government again. That plant will become independent. So now, the basic thing is we lack the courage to actually execute what we want to do. Don't forget there's international policies involved as well. The blast furnace technology in Ajaokuta is Russian, okay? And so the politics of it also is that you cannot afford to hand over Ajaokuta to a Western country. It will never get executed. You will never complete it. And until you complete it, you can't get value in the steel subsector. That's the reality.
Well, it's a very painful fact you're painting towards this morning, Dr. Adedipe. Dr. Fashola, I'm sure it is something that is equally as troubling for you as well, having to depend on another country for your economy. It would seem like that's what we've been doing consistently. You talked about the fact the other time that some of our policies as a result of the vagaries of international politics. Do you see a situation where today's Nigeria can begin to divorce itself? One of the examples that's also in the news now is the issue of floating the naira. You know, so do you see a time where Nigeria can say enough?
Well, you know, I mean, it's very interesting. You know, the field of economics, you know, as defined by Maynard Keynes, he said, look, an economist must be an all-rounder. You have to be able to comment about anything under the sun. And of course, the way we think is also to say that when we're dealing with a problem, we populate all the variables. This is one very important variable that Dr. Adedipe has spoken about today, which we usually try to avoid. Is there an international politics dimension to our development as a country? And I've always pushed that as well, you know, without making it the fulcrum of our discussion to say, oh, this is it, oh, they don't want us to develop and all of that. So we have to find our way around that, but it is real. And I mean, we're hearing empirically today, you know, it's a particular, you know, project which is stymied by this. However, in order to get out of that, the point is also to say that, look, University of Ibadan was formed about 73 years ago. and we've been churning out graduates, and maybe at a point, maybe at least for 50, 60 years, we've been churning out graduates in engineering. So whereas, you know, this is a 90-something% completed project, and I hear that 4 trillion has been spent on that project, you know, now we have to move. In fact, if you check how much has been spent, it's perhaps more than 4 trillion, because if you look at the value of money when, I mean, way back, when Naira was 60 cents, or, you know, or even more, you know, you realize that, look, we're talking of a humongous amount of money has been spent on that. So look, we need to have that, you know, resolve and courage to say, let's step forward. They say, without courage, all other virtues lose their meaning. So we need to move forward on some of those issues.
You talked about us being pragmatic, and both of you speak to this one. Let's be pragmatic. You're talking about courage. What needs to be done?
What needs to be done is to just have, you know, like they say, you know, strikers in football, they have a one-track mindset. Take the ball and score. You know what I'm saying? So we need a leader that will come and say, listen, Ajaokuta needs to be up. I don't care how you do it. I'm going to be there every day to ensure that this thing gets going, because it works for us. And I'm saying that, look, if we know that we can't depend on the Western world or neither Russia, why don't we do it ourselves? And why don't we also start things small and scale? You know, if we know where we're going. So one of the things about productivity is also to look at how our people can be productive, how the gown, which is the universities and polytechnics, can meet the town by being relevant with help from the crown, which is
what they are supposed to do in the first place.
Yeah, which is what they're supposed to do, which, of course, you see, in governance, people lose track. And we also are saddled with a democracy where people have 4-year tenure. And few things can get done in 4 years, you know. And, of course, after the 4 years, a new person comes with no new idea, his own biases, and nobody knows what kind of influence. So, and I think before I go, that look, there's this what I call the trilemma. So in economics, we're always talking about trilemmas, quadrilemmas. So people will say, why don't you deregulate the economy? So we try to deregulate the oil sector, but what worked against deregulation was the devaluation. Because at the time that they brought the you know, fuel price to 145, it was supposed to be a full and final deregulation. And people are saying, okay, yes, they've done it. Okay, Buhari has done it, no problem. Nobody went out to riot or anything. However, what came next was the devaluation. Therefore, 162 or 145 Naira became so little in dollar terms, and therefore the government was back under pressure. Today, we're talking about a 4 trillion Naira provision for subsidy alone. So
we'll come to that one.
That's a problem. So you have devaluation, deregulation, and economic growth. You have to let one go.
Okay, we'll come to that subsidy conversation, because it's also big in all of this. But I have to go to Dr. Adedipe again. I was hoping I'll take you up on this, but still this mass attack, and I like the consistency. Now we've talked about a striker just having one goal in mind. So let's attack this, you know, this FX question. We've had the IMF and World Bank giving, do I say suggestions now? We've heard from the CBN governor, but there's still this trilemma now. So we have different exchange rate windows. We have the INE, we have the official, and then the black market. And the CBN governor says, well, we don't have to approach this textbook-wise, okay? Allow us to find a solution in-house. But still, you see editorials and write-ups about our exchange rate system saying, you know what, it's hard to understand. So on the one hand, we have to create our own solutions, but then we operate in a global market. People look at our indices and they use it to decide whether or not they want to step in. So are we approaching this the right way? Let me see if that is simple enough.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Now, what we need to understand first, which relates to the remark I made earlier on, is that we are a net importer of oil and oil goods. And in fact, I also add to that services. So to that extent, the demand for foreign currency, primarily the dollars now in this conversation, is very high. And so when you have that, you'll be shooting yourself on the foot if you freely float your currency. And let me also mention this, that we have actually made some progress in the last 6 years, and I'll put it this way. Now, prior to 2016, we had no FMDQ platform. There was no investor-exporter window. And of course, there was no official reference to NAFEX. That's the exchange rate in the interbank market that now will become a reference in terms of government, or let me say central bank, you know, exchange rate that is fixed. Equally, that year we had a twin problem of currency crisis and, of course, economic recession. So the response to that was the creation of I&E window, okay? So we began now to see what alternative rate in the market would be compared to the administratively fixed rate by the central bank. As of today, central bank no longer fixes exchange rate administratively. That's the reality. So there's nothing like official exchange rate, so to say. Because what CBN now does is to take the rate from the NAFEX platform, where the market forces of demand and supply interact. Of course, there also, a central bank does what every other central bank and reserve bank does all around the world. And that is to intervene in the FX market, either by selling foreign currencies or by buying, in order to achieve the target rate. But the challenge we face in Nigeria is that the demand constantly exceeds the supply, which leads us back to the fundamental I mentioned earlier on. So until we begin to produce some things that we consume and therefore dampen the demand, not administratively, but through productive activities, we may not see any major changes. That but if we go the other way, operating in Iran, we can just forget about it.
Well, Doctor, we'll need to go on a break now. I recall this manufacturer who put out a tweet saying she needed, thousands of dollars to import raw materials, which is where we are right now, let's be honest. But she said what she got was only $200, and she was wondering, how do I achieve this? So I would like to even explore this question of the FX further. How well or how better can we do this such that, yes, we are going to a destination, but on the way to that destination, we don't kill all those involved in it, and a lot of other issues to raise. Please stay with us. You're welcome back. The all-important topic of the economy, it affects all of us, whether you like it or not. So yes, let's pay attention to the fine details. We'll continue our conversation with Dr. Adedipe, who joins us via Zoom, and Dr. Fasua right here in the studio. Just a moment, Dr. Adedipe. Let me get Dr. Fasua's thoughts on this Forex matter. So the IMF, World Bank, it's been consistent now. Allow your Naira free float, and the CBN has said, well, we're going to hold back. I recall the conversation the point you made about the WTO, Nigeria joining at some point, maybe as a result of some pressure here and there.
Same pressure.
Is this similar, and are we on the right path? The CBN has said we're finding homegrown solutions.
I mean, I always go back to, it's a very long discussion. I've written about this in the past also. I go back to the history, when the colonial master was leaving Nigeria, why did they leave the Nigerian pound at par with the British pound, which was perhaps one of the strongest economy in the world as at then, strongest currency? Why did they leave them at par? Why did we have to wait till 1986? And since 1986, why have we had a one-way devaluation of the Nigerian currency, and not only Nigerian currency. What we saw since 1986 was a devaluation of almost every African currency, especially sub-Saharan Africa, and it just became weightless and weightless and weightless. You know, Joseph Stalin said, and Margaret Thatcher also echoed in 1980. You know, Margaret Thatcher said in 1980, he said that, look, you know, to ruin a country, the first thing you do is to destroy or debauch its currency. To destroy a country, first debauch its currency. So the currency of a country is very, very, but your currency is you. Your currency is your dignity. Your currency is your economy. You know, so if you float the Nigerian naira, it'll simply float away, and we are going to lose the country. So they've been putting us under pressure, and of course, because we have very little choices here, you know, we don't have a choice but to give in. You know, and the same story has been said. Oh, once you devalue your currency, you know, your exports will become more attractive. I told you just now, the Marshall-Lerner conditions that says that, look, it will not happen except your export is such that because you devalue your currency, they're going to buy a lot more of that export. And what we sell is crude oil in the main. The rest is even cocoa. We're now number 5 after Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Indonesia, Cameroon, and so on. You know, so we've lost it on that count. You know, so you can see that the empirical evidence from 1986 to date is that devaluation has not. In fact, I say to you that, look, when you devalue a currency, you devalue the people. When you devalue a currency, you devalue the people. Because what you're saying, in essence, is that those who can afford milk will no longer be able to afford milk. Look at what has happened to inflation, true devaluation, in the last 7-8 years. We're seeing inflation of about 300, 400, 500% on even food items, like simple things like rice, even the ones that are produced locally. Because again, when you talk about local production, you forget that you go to WAMCO today, right? You know, I mean, they bring the substrate, whatever it is, they bring them from Netherlands. They add water to it, they mix it up. They are local, right? The MD is even a foreigner, so you have to pay him in dollars as well. So you see that even a lot of our local production is still externalized. Okay. So we've got to be very careful about what we're doing. Like I said earlier on, even our attempts to deregulate the economy has been hampered by the policy of devaluation. So we have a trilemma. So in a trilemma, you have to let one go between devaluation, deregulation, or economic growth. We've been devaluing and trying to deregulate an economy has grown. In fact, poverty has increased. But
it would seem like that's as you said, is what we've been trying to do since maybe 1983, with austerity measures.
Exactly, and 1980, under Shagari and
SPEM and the rest of them. You know, there's something Dr. Adedipe mentioned earlier, and he talked about the need for us to produce more locally. But then you also saw a quote we put out earlier, ascribed to the governor of the central bank, that says, between the importation of refined products and the importation of rice, sugar, and wheat, they consume close to 40% of the forex needed to fund imports in Nigeria. Now, his opinion is, if by the end of this year, forex allocation to these items end, then we can see the exchange rate achieve more stability. Are you as optimistic?
Well, I may not be as optimistic, but of course, the central bank governor is sitting, he sees the dashboard himself, so he'll probably be able to talk more authoritatively about that. I mean, we have set several of those goals in the past and not met them, for example. We're hoping that Dangote refinery will come on stream, and so we'll be able to reduce the amount of, because again, if you look at Nigeria's import profile, our biggest import, okay, is actually not the refined oil, that's the second biggest, but technology. Technology is our biggest import. The laptops you're carrying, your phones, you know, the softwares we pay for and all of that. Because we live in a world where we don't have a choice but to depend on those things massively.
What do we need to reverse those ones? What sector of Nigeria can deal with that?
Yeah, so again, you're going to have to incentivize a lot of local production. Again, remember, I think, look, I heard this said so many times, even by, you know, very enlightened people. The concept of comparative advantage is dead. Please, it's so dead. Okay, the bottom line is a country must incentivize itself, its youth, your human capital, to produce as much as possible. Look, go to the east of this country, where guys are there in Aba, in Owerri, in Umewi and Co, producing stuff. How much incentives are they getting? look, close your eyes and incentivize them. And then let's make it a national thing, not only in the Southeast. You know, so I'm saying that, look, if it's infrastructure they want, concentrate and give it to them. If it's some subsidy they want, give them money if they use. In China, many of those guys who took over the world, they get direct incentive from their government.
You're essentially talking
and I'm saying that, look, it doesn't have to end in the Southeast. Every state in this country should begin to talk about what they're producing in terms of, you know, tangibles.
You're back to the comparative advantage talk.
No, I'm just saying, no. Again, it's not comparative advantage.
No, maybe a micro comparative advantage, not a global sense.
No, what I'm saying, no, don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is not for them to say, oh, what have we always produced? I'm saying, what can you even produce more? So it's about breaking barriers. Okay, to say, look, we cannot sit down and say we're agricultural. Agriculture can only feed this country. It can never, ever, okay? Look, I ask you, how many tubers of cassava or yam do you need in order to buy one Toyota Prado? And how many of the Prados do we have? You probably need shiploads of those.
Which is why, you know, conversations around the...
so agriculture will never take us out, yes.
But you're essentially talking about, you know, pumping more resources and giving more attention to micro, small, and medium enterprises development.
Well, I don't even want that. You see, let me say,
these people you talk about in the Southeast, they are small businesses.
Again, that's another thing. So we deal with the fact that you need to incentivize them. But secondly, to say that they remain small and medium and enterprises is another fallacy we've been dealing with and living with in this country for too long. SMEs will never take the country to where you need to now begin to think about aggregation. And, you know, when we talk about international trade, you want to be able to aggregate and compete, you know, with the guys that matter. Because, again, the whole idea of small, whatever, will not scale, really, if you ask me. We've done that for too long.
I'm a little confused right now.
Yes.
Maybe Dr. Adedipe will be able to speak to this as well. Because one of the things that we've heard from you economists is that small businesses, micro, small SMEs make up something in the region of 70 or thereabout % of every economy. So if that is a fact, you are saying that SMEs cannot take us anywhere?
No. They can't. I mean, they can't really, because we have 41 million SMEs in this country. 41 million registered, according to the SMEDAN, all right? So the point is, look, they've been playing small. So, you see, but at what point, but we need more of the tribal. See, okay, so I think we're talking about what kind of capitalism we want to practice there. Look at what they did China is state capitalism, state-funded, state-backed, massive companies taking over the world. I told you the size comparatively now between them and, you know, but look at South Korea, Chaebol. They took people like, talk about the innocents of this world, you know, whatever else, give us other companies, the Dangotes of this world. We need innocents and Dangotes all over this country, massive companies that can collate and aggregate what the SMEs are doing.
Okay.
The SMEs alone on their own will not be able to play internationally.
Well, Dr. Adedipe, what's your take on that? The fact that, you have talked about production, and most certainly something everyone has talked about as well, and which is where, talking about being pragmatic now, in this whole conversation, how many big organizations can really take Nigeria out of the woods, so to speak, which is where each time I hear that, SMEs have an important role to play in the economy, I'm a little excited. I'm only expecting that maybe the needful will be done. But I don't know if you agree with Dr. Fashola here.
Yeah, now let me link a number of things you had mentioned, because we are on the same page in these matters. Number one is that the World Bank, IMF, always run by templates. Okay, I've been in the system myself before. I was a staff of the World Bank some 2-3 years ago. All right. Now they run by templates. In which case, what they give to you as a policy advice is not peculiar to your country. It's something they wave on the faces of different countries. So, like Tope said earlier on, it is now up to you to look at the advice they give and then look at your own peculiarities and fashion out what will work for you. All right? Now, when we talk about the SMEs, they are all over Nigeria. Of course, we know the pattern globally, that they create more jobs than the big ones. And of course, they are also pervasive. The one thing that I've also been a part of is to identify what we call 12 economic clusters in Nigeria. Okay? Those clusters will become the basis for aggregation that Tope mentioned. So what that means, when you look at this cluster, the question you ask yourself is, in this particular area, it is an agricultural cluster. The most dominant economic activity there is agricultural. So what do they require along the entire value chains of their activities. So in terms of infrastructure, what do they need? We've seen China do that successfully since 2004, specifically looking at infrastructure, various roads, railway, dry ports, and the rest of them. And we said, if we are able to pin that down here in Nigeria, that means every, you call it geopolitical zone, and we turn that to economic zones, all right? Every of these economic zones or clusters, as we like to describe them, can now have peculiar infrastructure needs provided that will now activate and energize all their value chains. That is when this will begin to make sense. So the aggregation of what they produce and linking them with the market is what will make all the difference. So linking them with the market, that means you link every SME within your space to the big one that operates in that sector. Now, like Tokwe mentioned, INOCs, almost 70% of INOCs components are produced locally. So that is backward integration. That is creating jobs for the suppliers of those parts, all right? So look at it from that perspective. They'll be able to create a lot more jobs, and of course, at the same time, scale to a level where you can compete internationally. So that's why I said I'm on the same page with Tokwe. It's just that I will explain it differently. The same thing he said earlier on. We call it the Washington Consensus. There are 10 policies in that bouquet that we call the Washington Consensus. Devaluation, deregulation, monetization, all of them, there are 10 of them, okay? But they are outdated. So if we are talking about deregulation today in Nigeria, it's an outdated issue. We should actually be looking at our peculiarities. And let me drop this, before I keep my mouth shut for now. And this is the fact of it. If you import certain products from anywhere in the world, and you are going to do something that will prevent you from importing it, you can be sure that country where you import from, we also want to do something that will make it impossible for you to produce locally. We often forget that when we are designing our policies, and I've seen this play out in some sectors, telecoms and the rest of them over the years. So until we recognize that we are competing, and competition means ultimately it's a zero-sum game, which means what Nigeria gains is a loss to the country from which we import today. So we must therefore be very clear about what we want to do, and as I said at the beginning, have the courage to go through it when those other voices come to advise you otherwise.
Well, Doctor, you forgive me for forcing that mouth open again as we custom on this one. So, I mean, you talked about production, consumption, and trade, right in the middle of it. So we can always talk about the fiscal policies that we need to see. We want to see the government taking the courage to bring on board. We can talk about the monetary policies as well. But how about the people policy? Because if we're going to all compete, it's not the government competing against other governments, it's the country as a whole. So what kind of people policy should we, the people, be bringing on board? I hope that makes sense.
A whole lot of sense. In fact, earlier when we were discussing the issue of multiple exchange rates, what came to my mind is there are 6 stakeholders there, okay? The monetary authorities, as you said, fiscal authorities, we have the banks as well, major stakeholder through which these foreign currencies flow. Then, of course, we have producers and service providers, and of course, the consumers, which means we're all together in it. So if I choose as a Nigerian to buy what is imported, and that is my preference, in a way, I'm also contributing to the pressure on the naira exchange value. In which case, government puts out a policy, and that is why leadership is very, very important. Leadership is about 2 things, vision and trust. In which case, you are very clear about where you are taking us to, and then people trust you because of your antecedents, what you have done, and what you also intend to do. So if we trust you, we will follow you, and that's where the issue lies. So leadership is a big issue for us here. If the leadership is right, you cast a vision before us, the people buy into that vision, they follow you. Then it means as a leader also, you must empower your people. And that comes to what Tokwe mentioned earlier on, capacity building, investment in human capital. We must place a premium on that.
Okay. Well, Dr. Fashola, in closing, three words came out for me there. I hope I remember the third one. He talked about the people, talked about trust, and something that you also talked about, capacity building. Now, bridging that, he talked about vision. People, trust, vision. Now, we have talked about those three elements here as well for quite a bit. In closing, first of all, how do we bridge the government people trust quotient?
In fact, talking about vision, we can help them with vision, all right? Usually, you see, many people who get into government, all of a sudden, it's so difficult for them to have that vision, because when you're too close to a big problem, you can't make sense out of it anymore. You're getting all those numbers coming out from NNPC, Ministry of Finance, FRS, trillions of naira. You get confused. You think that Nigeria has money. This country doesn't have money. In fact, we should be imagining an economy that's 3-4 times this size. I've always pushed for double-digit growth rate. That is the barest minimum of what we should be trying to achieve. So we can paint the vision. One of the visions I tried to paint earlier is to say, every state, in fact, perhaps maybe not the Chaibos, maybe not the Dangotes and all of that. We have AFCFTA, the African Free Trade Zone, to deal with. So what we probably should be doing is that in every state, perhaps every local government, we should be having people who add value to the agricultural products that we have. Look, if we say we're not exporting anything raw anymore, we can do it.
Okay.
In pushing the idea of let us export. We export yam, we export cassava, sesame seed, ginger, and all of that. What if we say, okay, we're not even exporting anymore because the companies that are here don't even have enough to produce into secondary products, which is where the dollars come from. So we can help them with the vision.
Well, close in 2 sentences.
Yes.
The people trust.
The people thing, okay, so, well, I wish, trust is very important. That depends on whoever becomes the leader. Even the trust can be helped if the leader was only communicative. 95% of the work of leader leadership right now, is communication. Talk to us, talk to your people. Okay. Because in terms of the people thing, I've been writing about mobilization, mass mobilization. Okay, look, you see, our people are all over the place, moving in every direction.
So for you,
we need to bring them back together, paint a vision to them, tell them this is where we're going, and look, Nigerians will deliver Nigeria.
The summary for you.
Let's add to this sentence. Whatever happened to your presidential ambition?
Come on, that was 2019. The big boys are the ones in the field now.
So all things are passed away.
If they don't do well in 2023, maybe we'll come back in 2027. But okay. I know that I run a fantastic ship with Nigeria. And people will listen to what I have to say. Nigerians will save Nigeria. Look, that's one thing. And what Dr. Adedipe has said, foreigners, look, everything we are doing, we're bringing Chinese, we're bringing Americans, we're bringing Russia, Nigerians will have to save Nigeria.
And Nigerians
we have no choice.
have listened to you both this morning.
Hopefully.
Dr. Tokwe Fashua, economist, public policy scholar, and former presidential candidate. He says that's in abeyance for now. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
As well as Dr. Biodun Adedipe, who is a former member, Presidential Committee of Experts on the Denomination of the Naira, as well as a former member, Federal Government Committee of Experts on Expenditure Review, as well as a former Senior Special Assistant to the President in the Office of the Chief Economic Advisor. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So, Sunrise Daily continues right after now with the State of the Nation. Stay with us.
Imo West Senatorial District, also known as Olu Zone, is the largest senatorial district in the state with 13 local government. However, the area in recent time has been bedeviled by insecurity. Concerned by the troubling situation, the leaders of Olu Zone are here at Nkwere local government area for a security summit to find a lasting solution, and in attendance is the state governor Hope Uzodinma, who is from Olu Zone, traditional rulers, political stakeholders, women and youth groups.
As leaders and indigents, we must rise up to the occasion and provide solutions for the socio-economic and infrastructure development of Olu Zone in a peaceful atmosphere.
The keynote speaker, former Nadeco chieftain Ralph Obiora, identifies unemployment among youth and lack of internal dialogue with the non-state actors as the root cause of insecurity in the zone.
What is the cause of this insecurity? That is, why are there people causing all this mayhem? And if the same question are thrown to a majority of Imo people and the other Easterners, they will promptly answer that the youths are idle.
For the guest lecturers, industrialization, job creation and strengthening of traditional and religious institutions in the zone is a possible solution.
The promotion of industries and support for establishment of factories and other public and private enterprises for meaningful job creation will also go a long way to guarantee relative peace and stability in our society.
We need to draw up a Marshall Plan, which I have christened Olu Recovery Program, to stabilize the economy of Olu. We need to leverage on technology to create a database for all Olu sons and daughters with specific specialized skills and talents all over the world.
Governor Hope Uzodinma maintains his position that security challenges in the zone is politically motivated, but insists that the government will continue to protect lives and property of all Imo citizens irrespective of the zone.
There is peace in Olu. There is unity in Olu. The only thing is that Olu is under attack. So my job, your job, is to find out who are those attacking Olu. But the good thing is that we have a government that an Olu son like Hope Uzodinma is at the head.
The summit ended with a communique which recommends that there is an urgent need for peace and development in the zone, which can only be achieved through massive enterprise and commerce.
Well, let's talk about the state of a polity. We're transitioning from the economy into the wider conversation around, the state of polity. We'll talk about, the Southeast build up to the 2023 elections, the security angle, the economy angle as well. So this is sort of all-encompassing. And as you've seen, to do that with us, we're joined by Dr. Okwesili Ezenwodo, former governor of Enugu State, former national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, and coordinator of the Greater Nigeria Conference. He joins us live from our Abuja studio. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us on Sunrise Daily. I'd like you to maybe cap it all up on the conversation we had earlier on the economy. And I mean, the Southeast came up regarding, the enterprise of the Southeast, some of the industries coming up in the Southeast. And I'd like to hear from you, being a leader in the Southeast. If there's anything you say the government can do to boost, that potential that we've seen in the Southeast, what would it be for you?
Thank you very much for having me this morning. I think the most important thing that we can do in the Southeast is synergy. Most of our states do not have such robust economy like the major oil-producing states that have a lot of money at their disposal. So if we acted in unity and with synergy in the Southeast, the 5 states working together, we can create an economic zone. Now, where we have low-hanging fruits and comparative advantages in various states, we concentrate on those ones and bring the efforts of the 5 states to bear on the best way forward for those advantageous states that can produce comparatively. We have done well in promoting industry in Aba sector. If the private electricity company that has done so well comes on stream, it will help a lot because energy is critical. In the Nnewi zone, we have done well. Many enterprises are working there. Innocent and other factories producing vegetable oils and what have you. Now, I believe that most of these states can do better if there was synergy. Transportation is important in moving farm produce to areas where we can have
agricultural industries that will add value to what we are producing. So these things are a bit too heavy for each of the states. Where we have done well, it has actually been as a result of the entrepreneurship of the independent Igbo man, which is I can succeed attitude. And they have done very well in championing enterprise in the area. There is a lot of small-scale industries, but these small-scale industries, as we have seen in the previous discussion, they need to be mobilized, they need to be properly coordinated. For example, we've heard that Innocent depends 70% on locally sourced components for their goods. Yes, for such big industries, we can channel more of the energies of the small and medium-scale enterprises to feed those big industries. And then they have sufficient raw materials, and the states can provide electricity, the states can provide roads, the states can provide water and other infrastructure necessary for these companies to grow. The Southeast is full of abandoned industries. And these abandoned industries are as a result of policy somersaults. People start an industry, and suddenly it's either the Naira is so badly devaluated, or they're not able to access foreign exchange to bring foreign components, or there is no water, there's no electricity, they can't run on generators, and so on and so forth.
Well,
so
Chief,
a lot of government is needed.
Yeah, well, there was something that you said that, that piques my interest, and I would like you to speak to it. You talked about synergy. What, in your opinion, could be standing in the way of that synergy that we need to take out of the way?
That is what we need is the governors of our zone to decide to act together. We have set up committees in the past, and there's a current one which is led by Professor Sitobu. They have produced beautiful blueprints that can take us to the point where we'll become the Dubai of West Africa. But we haven't got the political will of the leaders of the zone to implement that blueprint. In fact, the blueprint went to the extent of telling us how to generate the funds within the zone that can power whatever we want to do in the Southeast. It's a very comprehensive document. If we had the political will to put it afoot, I think in the next 5 years, it will be a different story. That political will is not there. The professionals we have in our midst, with all other political actors, they are put together for us, a working document, which most of us believe is doable. So political will is a problem.
And aside that conversation around political will, perhaps another snag that has been standing in the way of the Southeast from becoming, the Dubai of Nigeria, as you put it, is the security talk, or insecurity, I should just put it that way. And as a leader in the region, I mean, you've had series of meetings, consultations. You have at least a broader view than the average Nigerian. And I wonder, what do you make of the current security challenge being faced by the Southeast?
The biggest problem we have is unemployment. Massive unemployment, even of graduates, and there are no jobs for these people. The second thing is absence of sincere dialogue with the young people. The young people, apart from the fact that they have no jobs, they also feel extremely marginalized in a country of their own. The country does not give them any hope. And they accuse us, their leaders, of having failed them. So they want self-help. And we have to work very hard to convince them that self-help will not take them anywhere. It can only bring massive federal action to eliminate those who had resorted to self-help. Therefore, we need negotiation. And this is why we have repeatedly come to the federal government appealing that they negotiate with our youths. What are their problems? These problems are not insurmountable. I believe the country has the capacity to solve whatever problems that the youths are facing in the Southeast. And if you address those problems like they were, successfully addressed by Yar'Adua in South-South, Niger Delta area, and the successful story also in engagement of Southwest. For example, after the annulment of the election, then the country decided to pick the next president from Southwest. Southwest was already ready with their national anthem, their name of their country, their flag, and everything, their constitution. But zoning the presidency doused the agitation, and we had peace. So I believe that if the federal government decides to dialogue with the young people in the Southeast, and the governments there and the entrepreneurs can create jobs for the youths, there'll be peace in the Southeast.
Well, Chief, one other angle to that, the whole young people or youth population conversation is another one altogether that we will come to. But, in that, conversation we had before, you came on board on the program this morning, you heard the governor of the state saying that all of the issues of insecurity in Imo State in particular are politically motivated. And you are talking about the need for dialogue. I'm wondering, what you make of what the governor said in, pari passu, what you have also talked about now, the need for this conversation, this dialogue. But your opinion is to dialogue with the young people. But what the governor said, that the insecurity is politically motivated, is that something troubling for you?
It's not troubling for me. I want to be honest with you. I don't agree with the governor. I don't agree with him because I'm a politician. If I am in Imo State and I want to undo the sitting government and I create mayhem and I'm succeeding, I will take credit for it. And then I will challenge the government to counter what I have used to convince the young people to go to violence. So I don't believe that it is politically motivated because no politician is taking credit for whatever is happening in that place. Indeed, the whole thing goes to the root of the youth agitation. The youth agitation. And in Imo State, these youths feel that instead of federal government dialoguing with them, their government is in close cooperation with the federal government to stifle their agitation. So what is the reaction? They fight back. So all right. I think the governor should remove his mind from political causes. Okay. Yes, he has division in his party between himself and Okorocha. He has division between himself and PDP. He has division between himself and the youth agitators who feel that he's being used against them by the federal government. So this is where the crux of the matter is.
Okay. We'll talk more on that and the youth element that you raised just now when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Well, Chief, before we segue into the youth conversation, just a quick one. I'm wondering, when you said that if someone is responsible for the insecurity in Imo State, that they would come out and take credit for it. I'm wondering how you think that is possible for a politician to come out and say, I'm the one fomenting trouble in Imo State.
Well, I'm talking as a politician. If I want to oppose a sitting government and take advantage and come to power, and then I point out the weaknesses of the government, and the people believe that what I'm saying is true, and they react against that government, it gives me an opportunity to win the next election. So why will I not take credit that I'm the one pointing at the weaknesses of the government that will make me to win the next election? And if the masses are reacting to the weaknesses I'm pointing out, it gives me a political advantage.
Well, Chief,
I believe that we...
Well, my apologies for butting in.
But what I'm saying is that we should engage the youths.
Okay. Well, talking about the youth.
Dialogue.
Yes. Now, talking about the youth, it's not just something peculiar to the Southeast, you would agree with me. It's a conversation that's in pockets of areas all over the nation about the youth. We know how it is happening in the Southeast. Some would remember how it has happened in the Southwest, and it is still happening one way or another. And there are those who reference young people being responsible for a lot of insecurity occurrences in the North, in the different parts of the North as well. So in terms of engaging the youth, how would you propose that we go about it? Because as you've said, I mean, you talked about, in the previous conversation, we talked about having economic zones all over the place. And it is expected that it is the same young people that will play the pivotal role if those economic zones are to thrive. So in terms of engaging the young people as you're proposing in the various regions all over the nation, what are your recommendations as to how to approach that?
If I were in government, you invite these young people, invite the leaders from their zone, and sit down and show government sincerity and commitment to solving the problem. Now, what is your gross with Nigeria? Why are you fighting your country? Why are you killing your own people? Why are you kidnapping your own people? Why are you raping your own people? I believe that government will get answers to these questions. And government and the leaders of these zones will make a commitment to solving these problems. Where unemployment, as we know, is likely to be one of the major issues, how can government convince the people of its vision to solving the economic problem? Most of these people may not be able to wait for big industries to be created, but they can be empowered to start small and medium-scale enterprises. And as we said, for cluster advantages, those small and medium enterprises feed the future big enterprises. So there is market for what they are producing, even within their zone and other zones that may need what they are producing. And they go ahead and make sure that these funds reach the target group. And if you are a young person who is unemployed, and every day you hang out with your colleagues to drink and take drugs and look for the next victim, but now you're producing something and there's a market for what you're producing, I'm sure your attitude will change.
Wow.
You want to be a responsible person. You want to have a wife and a family. You want to have a roof over their heads. You want to have local transportation for them. That is a better way to live your life.
And I think that...
So government must show this kind of commitment in any of these zones where we have youth restiveness.
This picture you have painted,
now,
Chief.
If there are other things that the youths wish to have in order to leave crime and agitation, what is it that we can do? As I have always said, President Yar'Adua had a comprehensive answer in the Niger Delta. And today we export our crude oil, if not for the recent theft of the crude oil itself now. But the violence that prevented export of crude oil is no longer there.
If I could just follow up quickly, Chief.
Have been empowered.
On the point you made about having a dialogue, and it beats my mind, because I think that has been the crux of the matter. What shape, what form will that dialogue take? The same way they say, what's it called, restructuring, what does it mean? People say there are different, definitions, so there's no consensus. So for this dialogue, what shape, what form will it take? And are you saying that this bicameral legislature we have, which is meant to be a way to carry the yearnings and the agitations of people at the sub-state districts and zones to the national forum, that's essentially the idea. So are you saying that is not working? Because if the representatives, if the senators cannot adequately represent the yearnings of their people, then what's the point? So the question for me is, what shape, what form will it take?
I tell you what Obasanjo did in his time. He sent for Asari Dokubo, he sent for the leaders of the different groups in the Niger Delta that were causing problems in oil installations. They brought them to Aso Rock. They assured them they were not going to be detained and imprisoned. They sat face to face with the president and they talked. These young people I'm telling you about, if they have an idea that they can sit with the president of the country or a high-powered committee set by the federal government, they will gladly come and tell the federal government what is their problem. If you want, you can ask the leaders from their zone to accompany them. If they have anything against those leaders, they will tell the federal government that the leaders are to be blamed here or there, and the leaders will correct whatever the youths have against them. So it's a holistic discussion between the leaders of the aggrieved groups, the leaders from their zone, and the federal government. Federal government cannot shy away from this.
Well, just a quick one. Please do this in 60 seconds, because there is a very important issue to take you on. Isn't that in a way an admittance on the part of the governors, in those regions and states, that they cannot, quote unquote, rein in their young?
Well, the governors, they say that the chief security officers of their zones, but that's not in practice. They're not. Take, for example, Governor Soludo, who has just come on board. Very enthusiastic to solve this problem. And then he has reached out to the IPOB. The IPOB and the religious and traditional rulers in Anambra State and the Southeast sat down and discussed with the IPOB. And they convinced them that the fastest way that Nnamdi Kanu can come out is a political solution. And they believed and are ready to walk along that line. Then another group, another faction, which is led by somebody not even from Anambra State in the IPOB, and then some foreign supporters of the IPOB, say, no, They're not ready to dialogue with the state government. And state government says, well, if you are not ready to dialogue with us, we'll consider you as criminals and we'll face you. But you can see that they don't even have the capacity to face those ones. And they are still reigning mayhem.
Well, Chief.
The governor doesn't have police, he doesn't have army, he doesn't have anything.
Okay, we have to talk about the Southeast agenda now as we coast home, because this is a big one. We're a quarter to 2023, as I like to say. So it's important to at least keep tabs with the moves by the Southeast. So we've seen lots of candidates throw their hat in the ring, as we say, from the Southeast. But that's not the only area we've seen candidates come up. We've seen from the Southwest, South-South, Northeast, Northwest, essentially everywhere, even the North Central. And I know there's this push, and you have maybe touched on that, to have a Southeast president come 2023 for fairness, equity, and justice, and some other reasons. But what for you is the most, can I say, compelling argument for a Southeast president come 2023?
What I think is the most compelling argument is that this country, Nigeria, has a conscience. And that conscience comes on play from time to time. We have said it in the South-South with Niger Delta agitation for control of their resources. We have seen it at post-June 12 in the big political parties choosing their candidates from Southwest. We have even seen the federal government intervention in the Northeast Commission. We have also seen foreign aid flowing into the Northeast, and so on and so forth. What we're saying is, why is it that when it comes to deal with the Southeast, with the conscience of the nation, that conscience takes a flight? In the PDP, there is a written constitution about rotation and zoning of the presidency and other political offices. We have just done it in the last convention where we elected the members of our National Working Committee and National Executive. Why is it that now that we have come to the presidency, that constitution is jettisoned? Last time we went to choose our presidential candidate in Port Harcourt in 2019, we zoned the presidency to the north. Nobody from southern Nigeria contested in that convention. So why are we changing the goalpost in the middle of the game? Now that it's supposed to be zoned to southern Nigeria, and preferably to the Southeast that has not occupied that position before. In fact, since Nigeria was founded. So we believe that the only thing we can do is to appeal to the conscience of the nation. That a nation that is not built on justice, fairness, equity, cannot stand. It's on quicksand. So the nation has no moral conscience to deal with any issue whatsoever. Not because it is one part of the country today. It has jettisoned its moral conscience to deal with any issue in any part of the nation. Therefore, all we are saying is let justice reign. Even so in the party in government today, you are having a president for 8 years departing from the north. Why should you look for the north again for another 8 years? Does that dictate, a roadmap to justice, to peace, to equity, to unity? Why have people lost their moral conscience because of selfish interests to occupy the seat of president? You want to be president of a non-existent nation? We have to have a united nation.
And at this point, some of these decisions...
We said, though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Where is that brotherhood today?
So, Chief, on a final note, I'd like you to speak to this. So the decision around zoning, or do I say micro-zoning now for the Southeast, is still within the realms of a political parties. And, I mean, you can speak for your party, the PDP. Clearly, we're seeing candidates from literally everywhere, and they're telling you that allow everybody go for this, okay? The constitution of the country, they will say, does not say don't allow other people run. As far as you meet the criteria, you can go for it. Would you, I mean, maybe for you and other Southeast leaders, would you be raising any dust if eventually the PDP throws this open and says, let everyone throw their hat in the ring?
Well, we're party members. Whatever the party decides, we'll do. But we're saying to this party, if you don't zone it to the Southeast, will you survive the consequences? This is a party that was formed on the bedrock of justice, fairness, and equity. That is what we believed when we came together in 1998. Why should we jettison it right now? What's the reason? If you remove the foundation on which the party was built, how do you want to build it for tomorrow? What do you want to hand over to posterity and to our children? That's why we're saying, leaving the thing open. Okay? If you say by doing that, you satisfy everybody. But the truth of the matter is, PDP zoned the presidency to southern Nigeria when we formed the party. For the arguments that in the First Republic we had Tafawa Balewa, in the Second Republic we had Shehu Shagari, in the Third Republic we had a southerner, it was aborted, Abiola. Now it is only fair that we go back to the south. And we won that argument. And that fairness prevailed, as we have said before.
Chief, looks like we're just scratching the surface.
We jointly, together, decided to put the South as president. And that's what we're saying in the conference we're having later this morning by Greater Nigerian Conference, that together we can. If the conscience of the country says today we are going to put somebody in the Southeast, people in the Southwest did not vote for President Obasanjo, but we put him there because the country says
we have to run now because of our time. But just yes or no, if you can quickly, when you said that if it is not zoned to the Southeast, can the country survive the consequences? Is that a threat?
No, it's not a threat. It's just opening the eyes of those who have decided not to see clearly right now. Because injustice to one part of the country is injustice to every part of the country.
And I think that's a great place to leave it. Dr. Okwesili Ezenwodo, former governor of Enugu State, former national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, and the coordinator of the Greater Nigeria Conference. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, let's take your comments now.
Yes, the first is from Harry Wunonu about the Southeast uprising. Many paradoxes exist, appropriating the exploits of individuals recorded as the measurable indices of development to the non-performing and clueless public governance, holding religious and traditional rulers to account for youth restiveness and criminality when these are bereft of state coercive powers and so on. The Southeast is like a lion bound by its own chains. Let's look deeper as 2023 beckons. Imo used to be the entertainment capital of the Southeast.
Kenneth, I like that name, by the way, has this mail saying, manufacturing is one key component that can fix and stabilize Nigeria's economy, but it has to be accompanied by, again, political will of our leaders.
We need a conference on political
to
will.
define that word. Right?
Festus Akinboyewa says, FG must ensure basic security, increase tax and remove oil subsidy if we must reduce our borrowing that has reached a level never seen in our country. It's scary that our huge borrowing isn't a one-off, The sign is that it will continue to rise with its huge interest.
And finally, this tweet from I Enakin is saying it's time to completely deregulate the economy to encourage investors, fix our multi-taxation regimes and stabilize the power sector and fix the refineries. This will drive down the cost of production, boost our export to shore up the value of the Naira.
That's the show today. What are you doing to make the Naira better and Nigeria greater? Well, it's a question you have to ask. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.
On the side of that is, what are you doing with your Naira, essentially? So today, make the right choices with that Naira, all right? It's been a great time with you on the show this morning. I'm Kayode Fikulu. Have a fantastic day ahead.